Welcome back to the Nothing But Sports podcast. What a weekend in the NFL. It was just a magical weekend. A lot of great plays were made. And today we are going to be covering a little bit of the NHL, trying to work our way into that and analysis of all the NFL games and the question of the day. If you've not already checked it out, our national championship reaction was posted earlier on Monday night. So if you haven't checked that out, that's why we're not covering the national championship today. If you haven't checked that out already, go check it out. We appreciate it. Like and subscribe and let us know your thoughts on our question of the day. And that will be, what will it take to win? What will it take for a defensive player to win MVP in the NFL? A lot of conversation on that. We'll set the stage for that a little bit later. But now we are going to start with the NHL. And first, I want to start with one of the more interesting stories in the NHL this year, which is the Buffalo Sabres. They're on an absolute tear right now. They are 14-2-1 since December 9th. They're currently in a wild card spot. They're 5th in goals for and 7th in goals against in their last 20. They played good defense. They're 11th in high danger shots against, 4th in takeaways, 1st in giveaways in their last 20 as well. Their playoff odds sit at 56.6%. And my question is Lindy Ruff Coach of the Year, especially if they make the playoffs? What a turnaround that would be if they can continue this trend and at least kind of stay like, if they can win, I don't know, probably 55% of their games, they'll probably make the playoffs. So I do think it's a really interesting conversation. And Briggs, I'll bring you in and I'll get your thoughts, and then we'll have a little bit more of a conversation about it.
So there's no doubt that they're one of the hottest teams in the league right now. And I will update you. They're 15-1 since their December 8th game against Calgary, with a plus 24 goal differential. So they're winning their games. They've won pretty much almost every game by 2 or 3 goals, and then they're losing games by only about 1 goal. They had one 4-point loss or 4-goal loss in there. But you look at it, and this has been something that I'm a very big Washington Capitals fan, that has bit us in the butt for a couple of years. And are they peaking at the wrong time? Like, it's still January. This season's going to go on for 3 more months. Actually, I guess closer to 2.5 more months. But you don't want to peak too early, lose all that momentum, and kind of just drag your way into the playoffs. You want to be hitting that stride right before you go in. And as a Caps fan, I've seen this 3 times over the last 5 years, where we're just scalding hot going into the playoffs, or not going to the playoffs, scalding hot throughout the regular season, get to the playoffs, squeak our way through the first round, and then get smoked in the second round. So that's one of my biggest concerns. And you've seen the Sabres pretty much for the last 15 years be one of the biggest bottom feeders in the league. So I think for Lindy Ruff to get Coach of the Year, Cat's still out, too early for that. If they're still on this trend and they're still plugging and chugging, getting through the absolute beast of an Eastern Conference this year, and they get a playoff spot, then I think we can start having the conversation.
Yeah. They've gotten relatively good goaltending. They don't have really any stars in the net. Rasmus Dahlin has kind of unlocked. You have a lot of those guys. Tage Thompson has 25 goals, I believe. He's playing on an unreal level, and it's a lot of team hockey. It's kind of like all their points aren't centered on their top line. They're kind of just chugging away at it, and they were chugging in the hole they put themselves in early in the season. I think during this 18-game stretch, they went on, I think it was a 9-game winning streak. So I go back because Buffalo has consistently been one of the teams that just give up goals, especially bad goals. They're getting timely saves. They're getting these timely goals. And like you said, they're winning a lot of their games by 2, 3 goals. I watched one of their games the other night, and it was ridiculous. Like they were absolutely just running away. I think it was against the Senators or the Flames, one of the two teams. They were just running away with the game. And even if they are peaking at the right time, like I said, if they win 55% of their games for the rest of the year, I think they will make the playoffs. I don't think they've made the playoffs in 15 years.
It's something along
That's,
those lines. But one of the biggest things and one of my concerns is while the goaltending has been okay for Buffalo this year, it hasn't been good. Um, One of those things you look at when you get to the playoffs is you need a solid goaltender. Like you're not going to be able to go through the playoffs with someone who's subpar. And right now, and I'm pulling these stats off of Money Puck, absolute phenomenal website. I know we've talked about them before, but both of their goalies in Alex Line and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen are 36th and 42 in goals saved above expected. And so when you get to the playoffs, I think you're going to need that number to be a little bit higher, given there's still plenty of time to help boost those numbers. But when you're looking at it, how are you going to expect to go through someone like Tampa? Um, and Boston's been surprisingly good this year, even after the year they had last year. How are you going to expect to go through teams like that who have better goaltending, third and fourth respectively, and two teams that are at the top of the Atlantic?
so here's my argument is the standards in Buffalo are not very high right now. I think that fan base would be pretty happy. It would be remarkable just to get into the playoffs. The last time they made the playoffs was 2011, so it was 15 years ago. I don't like if I'm Sabres fan, like I am Red Wings fan. I'm just happy to make it to the playoffs. Like, that's all I want. Like if we go get swept in the first round, yeah, it's not great, but like I would rather I like the feeling of being in the playoffs. And I think they're one of the top 10 youngest teams in the league. And if Lindy Ruff continues this up, you kind of saw it with New Jersey. You kind of saw Lindy Ruff kind of unlock Jack Hughes a little bit and some of those other guys that are on the Devils. And so if Lindy Ruff, and I know it didn't end great in New Jersey for Lindy Ruff, but I think if you continue to just keep building and building, especially, I don't know if you remember, but Lindy Ruff was getting it on the shins when he got hired at Buffalo. Sabres fans was another bad hire, this, that, and the third. And now he's got them in a wild card spot, I believe it's the second wild card spot, and they're 2 points
You
ahead of the next team. So
No, so they are in the second wild card spot. They're only 1 point ahead of Toronto, but there's 7 teams within 3 games of that wild card spot. And that seventh, I'm including the Penguins in that because while they do hold the third spot in the Metro, that third spot has been bouncing around between 3 or 4 different teams for the last week. And so, I mean, you look at it, and I say the beast of the East this year for the NHL, every single team, including the last place Rangers in the East, is above 500 points percentage, which is
so
unbelievable.
they're up 3 points on Toronto because you have to include the extra game played for Toronto. Um, so yeah, they're up 3 points on Toronto because of the extra game Toronto's played. So you kind of, I think if they make a playoff spot, it's huge market improvement for a organization that has been bashed for the last really 10 years of making bad decision, and they're finally getting some of those guys to unlock their potential. Tage Thompson's already got 25 goals. Like I said, I think he's got 50 something points. And all it takes is for you to get in the playoffs and you can go on a run. And granted, if they do run into the Lightning or the Wings or the Canes, whoever, they the crazy. I mean, you saw it with what was it, Columbus knocking Tampa out a couple years ago. I believe it was in the first round. Like teams that you
I
don't
think that was the COVID year when they swept Tampa 4-0?
no, that was 2019. It was 2019 they swept Tampa.
I think it was the COVID year because that was also I think that wasn't that the super long 7 overtime game.
No, Tampa won that series.
Hmm.
Toronto won the year before. So they swept Tampa. Like crazy things can happen in the playoffs. There's such a high variance. Like we talk about this with football all the time about the variance level in football and how it's only but so high. Game to game in hockey, the variance level is very, very high. And so when you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. And again, even if Buffalo gets swept in the first round, it's a playoff berth for the first time in 15 years. It's one of the longest streaks in pro sports right now. So I think that team would be very happy with the playoffs. And I think specifically with Lindy Ruff getting them to the playoffs in his first year with the Sabres, I think that would be a remarkable accomplishment for the Sabres. And you got to see what else everyone else does. Like if we'll talk about this in a minute, but if Rick Bowness gets Columbus to the playoffs, like there's an argument that Rick Bowness should win Coach of the Year. But like there's a lot of things that, and you don't really see turnarounds happen that quick in hockey like you do it in other sports. So I think getting to the playoffs would be a remarkable accomplishment, and I think it would warrant at least a conversation for Lindy Ruff to win the Jack Adams.
So now I'm gonna also throw this out there. What are the chances that Jared Bednar wins Coach of the Year? The Avalanche have 74 points, just over halfway through the season.
That's also an argument. And
Because
they've lost their last two. I mean,
at this pace, they have 5 regulation losses, and the second closest team is Vegas with 11. That's less than half. And you're sitting here on this pace. I think they're going to shatter Boston. What Boston had like 128, 130 points a couple years
something
ago.
like that.
They'd be close to beating that.
The age-old question with the Avalanche is, are they going to lose in the second round? So they're just they're glorified Minnesota Wild, except for the year they won the Cup. But there's an argument for that. That team, I think Chris McFarlane has done an incredible job as GM for the Avs, and we'll have a conversation probably next week about the Avs specifically and what they're doing right now. Granted, they're on a two-game losing streak right now, but the closest team to the Avs is in the East with 64 points, and that is Tampa with 47 games played. So the Avs have one less game played than them, and they're already leading by 10 points. So it's not really particularly close. The fact that you have 33 wins in 46 games is just remarkable.
19-1-3 at home is also pretty impressive.
Yeah, and we will dive into this conversation, but you look at the Bruins. The Bruins are super hot right now. They're a young team, and we'll talk a little bit more about the young guns, but a lot of these younger teams are really doing it. Like Detroit's, I think, bottom half of the league or top half of the league when it comes to youngness. Montreal and Buffalo, and going back to Buffalo, they're an extremely young team, and they have a lot of potential to grow. It was kind of like how the Devils were under Lindy Ruff a couple years ago. They have the potential to grow, and I think that this is a really good sign for a team that has consistently been a bottom feeder in the Atlantic, consistently been last in the division, last in the East. They've had a multitude of top 5 picks, and they're finally unlocking themselves, and they're playing enough defense where they're able to turn that into offense and go go win some of these games by a couple points. Like I said, they're first in giveaways, so like they turn the puck over the least. They're fourth in takeaways. They're not giving up a lot of high danger shots. So if they can continue relatively on this pace, I think they will be able to make the playoffs.
It'll be interesting to see. There's still some of the hardest months of the season left. So I will say last thing on this topic though, and this has been something that's been talked about for years, is that Buffalo is one of the hardest places to play on the road just because going there in January, going there in February is just such a miserable experience for a hockey player.
I can second that. And we kind of talked about this a second ago with Columbus. Columbus made the decision to coach swap Dean Evanson for Rick Bowness. When they made this switch, Columbus was last in the East. I think their roster is still somewhat of a long way from competing. They're 29th in the penalty kill, 26th in goals against, 31st in shots against. And they won their first 3 games under Rick Bowness by a combined score of 13-7. So 7 goals in 3 games, about a little bit below average for goals against. They've got a young goaltender starting for them, which we'll talk about in a minute. But for Rick Bowness, and they kind of bolster that roster because they were a lot better last year. They were very close to making the playoffs. Them and Detroit were fighting for those last 2 wildcard spots at the end of the year. I forget who were the other teams that made it, but I think it was Montreal and was it the Rangers?
Ottawa.
I think that's right.
Ottawa was the other team out of the East.
So Detroit and Columbus were fighting for those last 2 wildcard spots last year, and they bolstered that roster a little bit. They got it a little bit better, and it's kind of been an underperformance. They got given up a lot of goals this year, and so you make the swap from Dean Evanson, who, off the top of my head, he coached really well in Minnesota. He did fine over there, but couldn't get past the first round. That's ultimately why he got fired from Minnesota, is because they, again, couldn't get out of the first round. And so Columbus hires him. I think it was 2 years ago. Dean Evanson was a lot responsible for Columbus making that huge jump into almost being in a playoff spot, so they had a lot of faith. Dean Evanson deserves a lot of credit. So you call Rick Bowness out of retirement, 70-year-old Rick Bowness, right out of retirement. And if you remember, the last year Rick Bowness coached, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, he was with the Jets, and the Jets won the President's Trophy. I believe they lost in the first round to the Abs that year. And he coaches really defensive. He helped unlock the full potential of Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor, and had Connor Hellebuck playing on a really high level. I believe Josh Morrissey was on that team. That defense was playing at a super high level. And so you bring in Rick Bowness, and like I said, they won their first 3 under him by a combined score of 13-7. And so I kind of want to just gather your thoughts of how Rick Bowness is going to try to bolster this team to the playoffs. They are currently 6th in the Metro, and they've won their last 4. One of them was under Evanson, and they are 6 points out of a wild card spot. So, well, I guess 9 points out of a wild card spot. So, 9 points out of a wild card spot. How do you think what do you think about this hire specifically, and especially making this change mid-year, calling Rick Bowness out of retirement, and just how do you think the long-term future with the short-term is going to be for Columbus?
So first off, I think the expectations need to be handled, and this is something that goes for pretty much all sports, is that when you have a team that's in the gutter, and you hire a new coach, you have to understand that change does take time. While there are some immediate effects and things that are evident, like from day one, as you've seen, I guess that new life that has taken or been breathed into this team, that's evident. I mean, they're hot right now. How long that streak and how long this, I guess, honeymoon phase lasts, don't know. Can't predict the future. But if I'm the ownership group for Columbus, if I'm the GM, I have to understand it is not very likely that we're going to make the playoff. Again, money puck. Let's see what they have them at here. They have Columbus 21% chance. So not entirely out of the picture, but not likely at the same time. So when you look at it, it's more of, okay, how do we take Bonus's system, institute it, and what players and pieces do we need to either go out and draft for 2 years down the line, or what veterans do we need to bring in that are going to be able to kind of bolster the system and kind of go from defense to offense, and how do we implement that in a conference that I don't think is going away anytime soon.
And again, even if so, let's play this down the road. Even if you don't make the playoffs this year, how long do you think Rick Bonus stays? He's 7 years old. He was on the couch, not just enjoying life with him and his wife. A lot of the speculation was he left because him and his wife's health problems. So long term, how is this going to affect you? Because if you have to say you do make the playoffs, not this year, but next year, how does this affect the momentum that you have? Because it's not like football where you have an offensive coordinator that's like, that's a guy. That's a guy. You don't really see that as much on a day-to-day. The most you really see is a coach on the power play. How does the coaches on the power play and the penalty kill? How do you think that? In which Columbus fired their coach that was in charge of the penalty kill, which was 29. So again, I think I have faith in Rick Bonus. He did incredible things with that Jets team. They had that team playing on such a high level. And he had that team playing on such a high level. And you saw him really unlock that defense specifically. And you look at Zach Wierenski, who was the runner-up for the Norris last year. Does he take that next step up of being that franchise defenseman? One of the best players in the league, defenseman in the league right now, don't get me wrong. But can he take that next step of being that really franchise centerpiece that they have around them? I mean, a lot of the moves in the offseason, you're like, okay, Columbus, like, we can do this. It's the defensive part of the game is going to have to get solved, which Rick Bonus has specialized at over his career. If you look at all the teams he's coached, he's one of the most experienced coaches in NHL history. He's coached a lot of puck. I think he's been in the league for 40, I think it was like almost 40 years, something like that. So he brings so much experience to the table. I think they can turn it around and at least fight for a wild card spot or the third seed in the Metro. But I am concerned for the long-term capabilities for this team and for Rick Bonus leading the helm.
So I think this is he might be more of a transitionary coach, not thinking about it and hearing his age, where it's like, okay, he'll set up a system and then they may bring in some younger assistants to kind of finish out his system and kind of, I guess, have him coach them up on how to coach a little bit, if that makes sense, especially those listening. But I'm trying to think of other coaches who are just super old.
I mean, a lot of those guys moved to front offices. Like, you look at Barry Trotz. Barry Trotz is one of the older guys. He moved to front office. A lot of those, or they just retire. There's only so many coaches in the league. And
is Torts in Philly?
Yes. maybe. I
So
don't
he
remember.
might be he might be on the older side because he's been around for a minute.
I'm looking it up.
And then that's another team that has been pretty moderate, I'd say. They haven't been great, but they're hot to start the season. They've lost 6 straight, but Philly's still fighting for a wild card spot. What are they? Let's see, 52, 5 points out of a wild card spot. Yeah, they're 5 points behind the Sabres.
He does not. Tortorella does not have a job right now.
Ah,
At least from what I can see.
when did he get fired from Philly?
Last year.
Yeah, March 27th.
Yeah, so Rick
All right.
Bowness has been coaching in the league for 44 years. He played for 9 years. And he coached the Stars, got them to a couple of Western Conference Finals. Obviously, remember that Winnipeg team. He coached for Phoenix, the Islanders, the Bruins, the Senators. He has never won a cup. So so yeah, I really think that we will continue to monitor the situation because I think Columbus is a fascinating scenario, and that team is incredibly young. So I do think they will continue to move and get better as time goes on, especially under an experienced coach like Rick Bowness. Moving to more young teams and players, the NHL future is in incredible hands. You look at some of this young talent, and obviously the headline is Macklin Celebrini, third in points in the league. Sharks are in the second wild card spot in the West, and he's leading that team. Next highest point scorer has 32 points for the Sharks. So Macklin Celebrini is doing it himself. I think he's 19 or 20. He just been incredible. Like, he was a bona fide number 1 pick. He was the next guy he was the next bettered all these other guys that get drafted number 1. And so you got another young core in Montreal. Hudson is third in defenseman points. Demidov and Kapanen are top 5 in rookie points. Bedard has 19 goals in 35 games. Or, I think that says 35. Anaheim has 3 young forwards in Leo Carlson and Cutter Gauthier. Both have 40-plus points. Beckett Sinecki, number 2 in rookie points. Anaheim's 2 points out of a playoff spot. And Matthew Schaefer, who is third among points and goals among rookies as a defenseman. 32 points and 13 goals. What is your overall thoughts on these rookies and these guys that are like under 21 more so, in the future of the league, who is playing a lot of really good hockey?
So I think we're seeing in real time the passing of the torch from Ovechkin, John Carlson, Crosby, Malkin, all of those guys from the early 2010s, kind of with them starting to phase out. They're getting old. They're starting to retire. You saw, I think Joe Burns didn't he retire?
Maybe.
But a lot of the guys from that era of hockey in which they kind of, I don't want to say revived it, but they carried it through. You had like the lockout years and everything. And you look at the state of hockey now compared to what it was 10 years ago. I think the following and the base is so much stronger. And you're seeing guys kind of come through the era of when they were looking up to those guys who kind of got through that rough stage in the sport, and they are now just absolutely thriving and taking the league to new levels. And the product on the ice for the NHL, I don't think has ever been better. You look at the playoffs last year, they were absolutely phenomenal. You look at the regular season last year, that was absolutely phenomenal. And the regular season this year, it's been decent. It's not fun watching the Avalanche blow everyone out every night, but can't pick and choose every battle. But it's been great seeing the next generation of guys come in and thrive. And you talk about when you go from college to pro in the NFL and the difference in speed of the game. I think that is magnified significantly in hockey, where the sport's so bang, 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 bang. And you go out and just people who play recreationally, when you go to a stick and puck or a puck shoot, whatever you call it, a million different names, you go and you play against guys who are in juniors or whatever, you see the difference in the speed there. And imagine that kind of level, but between those guys and the guys in college and those guys and the guys in the NHL. I mean, the difference in skill is just unbelievable. And for these young guns to come in and I don't want to say dominate because they're not dominating yet, but to just put on an absolute clinic. I mean, you saw McDavid come into the league, what was it, 2016?
I
And
think
was
so.
just came in with his balls out. I mean, he walked around like he was the dude. And he was. And you're seeing Celebrini kind of do that. And given the Sharks have been one of those teams that have been in and out of the gutter. I mean, they'll be absolute trash one year, then they'll be knocking Vegas out of the playoffs the next, and then back down to the gutter the year after. And so you're seeing them kind of, and it's a lot of these kind of bottom feeders that have gotten a lot of the young talent from being somewhat high up in the draft. But Buffalo getting Tage Thompson. I'm trying to think of some of these other notable, I guess Bedard to Chicago. And given Chicago is one of those cases where you're going to need to build around him a little bit more to succeed and unlock his full potential. Because where you have McDavid's got Draisaitl, they've
Which
got a couple of
Draisaitl
other.
was another first round pick.
They've got other competent pieces around them. And Chicago, ever since the days of Kane, Taves, Patrick Sharp, like that era of hockey in Chicago is gone. But I think you're going to see a new era come in and whatnot. But again, the future of the NHL, I don't think could not be brighter. And I don't think there's going to be a worry and a drop off of play when you see guys like Crosby, Malkin, Ovechkin, a lot of those just absolute studs from 15 years ago when they retire. I don't think there's going to be a drop off in play or a drop off in numbers of people viewing the NHL.
Well, and I'll make this point and then we'll move to the goalies as well. There's a lot of layers to this. Like, you're not going to have a guy that's an 18-year-old score. You're not going to have 18-year-olds consistently going for a point per game. That's just not going to happen. I think the leading point scorer in the league leading point scorer for rookies is 40 points. So you're not going to have guys consistently going for a point per game. And when you talk about the drop off not being there, you also have those guys in the middle of the road that were drafted in the mid 2010s that were McKinnon, McDavid, Draisaitl, Kucherov. There's a couple more I'm missing, but those are the ones that kind of ring off the bell. And those guys are carrying the torch as well. And I think that these young rookies have been so incredible, and a lot of the youthful teams are getting in the playoffs. Like, you look at the Islanders. The Islanders are nowhere close to a playoff spot. They're one of the oldest teams in the league. It's a lot of these young teams aren't at the bottom of the standings. They're at least sixth in their division, except Vancouver, who's at the bottom of the league. I think they're seventh and youngest. But moving to the goalies, I mean, goalies are a little bit different. It takes time to develop. Jesper, I don't know how to pronounce first name. Jesper Waldstedt has 12 wins, 4 shutouts, .916 save percentage in 20 games this season. Spencer Knight has 13 wins, 91% for Chicago. Jake Greaves has 14 wins, 90.8% for Columbus. Dustin Wolf has 15 wins, 90% for Calgary as a starter. So you look at a lot of these young goalies, these goalies that are under 25, a lot of them are on bad teams except Wallstead. And a lot of these young goalies are just really coming in the league. You also have Askarov. He doesn't have his greatest stats, but San Jose's in a playoff spot right now. You have a lot of these young goalies that are starting to come in the league, and goaltending has dropped off over recent years. You don't have the Jonathan Quicks. You don't have the Henrik Lundqvist. You don't have, even to go back further, Martin Brodeur. You don't have Roberto Luongo. Bobrovsky's coming to the end of his career. There's Marc-Andre Fleury. You don't have a lot of these superstar goalies anymore. It's kind of Shesterkin, Sorokin, and I can't think of another really big name in goaltending right now. Bob, obviously, Vasilevsky, but you don't have as much of these star goaltenders that are posting 93% save percentages. And I think that's how the game's changed. But we look at save percentage now, and it's like a 91.6% is insane. Like those are really good numbers. Goals against average used to be insane. If like that was 2 goals against average is what you were shooting for to be a top goalie in the league. Now your goals against average is, I think the lowest one of a goalie that's played like 20 games is like, I think it's like 2.4 goals against. So I think the game's changed a lot. It's a lot more of an offensive game now. It's a lot faster, and the goalies haven't caught up. You see this, sports are very cyclical. We say this all the time, but a lot of these goalies are coming into the league and they're posting these 90% save percentages on a lot of these bad teams where they have a lot of high danger chances. And I think if you look at goals saved above expected, it's an advanced stat, so don't want to get too far into it. But a lot of these young goalies are in the top half of the league, the top 16 of the league. I know Jack Greaves is up there. I think Dustin Wolf's up there. But a lot of these young goalies are up there.
I couldn't agree more with the sports are cyclical. And one of those things that we'll see is you look back in the day when Gretzky was in the league, you look at the goaltending then, and then how you saw the era of Brodeur and some of those other goalies start to come in and just dominate. And now you're starting to see shooters just absolutely able to pick a spot and the size of a pencil, like the diameter of a pencil, and just place it there every single time. And it's just unbelievable how good they're getting. And given, I'm sure over the next 5 years, we'll start to see kids coming in the league for goaltending that are just standing on their head night after night after night.
And I don't think that's going to be as far as we think it is. And I think as sports are cyclical, probably 10 years, we'll be talking about, wow, like 91% save percentage. That's about middle of the road in the league. So kind of like how it was 10 years ago, you'll have these legendary names like Shesterkin, Hellebuck, Sorokin, and a lot of these other goalies. Even though I don't think Sorokin's been anywhere near as good this year. But speaking of stars and young guns, the Broncos moving into the NFL playoffs, which is what we're all here for. Broncos win an overtime thriller 33-30 over the Bills. Our star of the game is Malcolm Roach with 5 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 1 tackle for loss, and a forced fumble. And watching this game, you're just sitting there wondering, maybe Josh Allen always has one of those games where it's like, what are we doing? Like, just the decision making was really poor. The Broncos were 4+ in turnovers, or +4 in turnovers. The Broncos had 16 points on the 5 turnovers, 3 of those being the game-winning field goal. But they lost almost every stat. They were 8 of 16 on third down. Buffalo was 10 of 15. They lost rushing 183 to 70. Red zone, Buffalo was 3 of 5, Denver was 1 of 4. Time of possession, Buffalo had 41 minutes, Denver had 29. And so they found a way to win it in with the turnovers. And give all the credit to Denver. They really attacked the ball on defense. They had Allen constantly running away. But they didn't take the approach Jacksonville did when it came to stopping the run and running the ball. And we had said last week that the Broncos needed to run the ball and stop the run. And they didn't run the ball. They didn't stop the run. And so now you have your quarterback who's led you, Bo Nix, who is out for the season now. And so now you really you're in a oh crap mode of what do we do? It's like we have to run the ball. And you kind of hope to get J.K. Dobbins back. But it was an incredible effort from Denver on defense. I know there are a lot of controversial calls. I will say you don't get to blame, even though I disagreed with some of the calls, you don't get to blame the refs for the game when you turn the ball over 5 times. That's just not. But Buffalo probably could have scored 50 if they didn't turn the ball over 5 times. But they turned the ball over. Josh Allen made a lot of boneheaded mistakes. And so turnovers, penalties cost the Bills in this game. They had no sacks, 5 tackles for loss. Denver had 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. And now, like, I feel bad for Josh Allen in this team because they've gotten so close so many times. But at the same point, you can't you can't turn the ball over 5 times in a game and expect to win. It was a consistent theme this weekend. You have that with the Texans game, which we'll talk about later. You can't consistently turn the ball over and say, oh, the refs did this. Oh, the refs did this. And there was a lot of questionable officiating this weekend. But we'll actually talk about that in a second. I think you know what I'm referring to. I'll get your take on the game, Briggs.
So, looking back, and I have my notes from last week here, the things that I said that Denver needed to do to win. They needed to run the ball and control the tempo. As you just mentioned, they didn't control the tempo. I think Buffalo had, what,
They have 41
11
minutes
more,
time of possession.
11 more minutes, 12 more minutes to control the ball. And
Yep.
then rushing yards, Bo Nix led the team with 29. And we had the same problem with New England a couple weeks ago, or I guess it was against LA. Your quarterback should not be the leading rusher for the team. And Bo Nix isn't, I don't want to say he's classified as like one of the most mobile quarterbacks in the league, but he shouldn't be the one leading your team in rushing, especially against this Bills defense. When the one thing you needed to do to come into the game to really go out and dominate was to run the ball. The other big thing I said was red zone efficiency, limit turnovers, and you can't be settling for field goals. They were 1 for 4 in the red zone for touchdowns, and they ultimately settled for field goals. Given, well, I think one of those trips was the game-winning field goal, but still, you look at those other instances. Now you're going and relying on Jarrett Stidham, as you mentioned. Bo Nix broke his foot on the second to last play of the game, and you're relying on him as a backup to go and play the Patriots defense, who just made CJ Stroud look funny yesterday. I mean, Stroud, and we'll get to that in a minute, but you can't expect to go play with these numbers and expect to go and win a Super Bowl. I mean, I don't want to say they got bailed out, but Denver, I don't think, had any business winning that game. I mean, their defense saved them. I mean, their offense was gifted the game. You look at some of the other things, the other massive thing I take away from this game, downfield passing. Thanks to NFL Next Gen stats, if you were to take a guess at what Josh Allen was on passing down the field on passes of more than 20 yards, guess what his percentage was? Guess how many yards it went for?
I don't think maybe he was maybe like 1 of 5, something to that effect.
0 for 9 with 2 interceptions.
One of those
You
was the interception that sealed the game.
And again, I'll get to my breakdown on that play here in a second. But you look at the thing that we said that they had to do for Buffalo to win, they had to attack the secondary. You looked at what Denver did in their 3 losses this year in how many yards they gave up to the passer, 316, 300, and 279. Josh Allen threw for 283, yet all 283 of those passes, but very strong majority came from passes inside 10 yards and yards after the catch.
But I said this earlier in the week of Buffalo relies so much on run after catch, and they didn't really stop that. They were focused on stopping the downfield pass, which ended up working out for them. Give them credit. But the lack of running the ball against the 28th ranked run defense and trying to throw the ball. I think Bo Nix had 40 passes, something to that effect. And you choose to make Bo Nix the star of the game. I don't think he got hurt because of it, but you chose to make Bo Nix the star of the game. And then it ended up working out, but running the ball, I don't understand the thought process of passing consistently against the number 2 or the number 2 pass defense in the country or in the league. I don't understand that. Granted, the downfield passing ended up winning them the game because they took shots at these safeties. These safeties walked too far up in overtime, and they just took shots at these corners who got caught flat-footed and ended up getting 2 pass interferences off of it to win the game. I have my own beef with that. I'll say it.
Hold on. I've got comments on that. Well, first off, we had the videos prepared to play, but technology is not participating. When you look at those pass interferences, the first one, I will agree, very, very soft call. In the playoffs, I don't know if you can make that call and call that as pass interference. The second one, I think by far and away was early contact. The second one, I think was pass interference. You can argue whether or not you want to throw the flag there because they were kind of allowing it all game, but it wasn't. It was by the definition pass interference. Now, on the flip side, this would have never happened should the refs have Buffalo was getting away with holding calls all game, and in the end zone there, that was atrocious. I mean, he had the arm around the neck, dragged him to the ground, everything. That should have been a game-ending safety, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that would have been the first time a playoff game has ever ended in overtime on a safety. But so you take that interception never would have even mattered. The 2 PIs, again, never would have mattered. But I don't think that, and again, you mentioned this earlier, if you're the Bills, you can't blame the refs. Again, something we've said the whole time, you got to be better than one bad call.
I will second that. And again, 5 turnovers. This game wouldn't have even gone to overtime. But I will say, if that first pass interference is not called, it wouldn't. That second one, that play call wouldn't have been the same because they got the first one and they're like, oh, we can take advantage of this. If that first one doesn't get called, I think it's a different story. 2 things, and I will second this on the Texans game as well. Or not the Texans game, the Rams game. 1, I hate the pass interference spot foul. I know it's been that way forever. I hate it. I've hated it all year. I think it should be a 15-yard penalty because, and secondly, I think you should, in overtime, in the playoffs, I don't really care about regular season. You should have to go score a touchdown to win the game or just let the clock run out. With how good kickers are, I don't think that we should just settle for a field goal with time on the clock when it's second down. That's my opinion. You're welcome to disagree.
I will actually completely agree with the second half of what you just said. I think it's very similar to how the NHL doesn't go to a shootout in the playoffs. They just keep playing overtime until someone scores. You shouldn't be able to just, especially you got guys like Cam Little nailing 68 69-yarders like it's nothing. You shouldn't be able to just get to midfield and be like, oh, okay, we're good. We're packing it up. Game over. You should have to go and score a touchdown. And while I feel bad, and again, I will say we'll get this to here in a second. I do feel bad that the fans in Chicago had their hearts ripped out of their chest last night like they did. To have that roller coaster of an emotions where you go from Caleb Williams nailing that fourth down pass to the interception to the Rams subsequently hitting a 37-yard field goal to win. I think, again, whatever, it's kind of stupid. But in the NFL, I think that college should adopt a spot foul for pass interference. And I think it's because you look at in the way college is now, you get a lot of these 2-minute drills where it's only a 15-yard penalty. If a team's running out of time, all you have to do is just PI them, and you're stopping them from getting a potential 50, 60-yard pass play, and they're only getting 15 yards out of it. To where, and there's sometimes I will say there's very obvious calls to where it's like, okay, he really should have been able to catch that, and it was very obviously interfered, but wasn't. I think it's one of those situations where you should be able to, and this has been discussed before, there should be a review for pass interference.
I will say that would make the end of games incredibly too long. I will still stand by my point. And one more point I want to make on the overtimes. Good.
I don't think there can be any argument for games being too long when there are as many damn commercials as there are. If the NFL wants to do,
I can agree with that.
Go to commercial when you do the review, but and as a Saints fan, to be robbed of the 2018 NFC Championship and have that being one of the worst blown calls in the history of football, and then to get that rule changed and then have it go back the year after, again, you review PI, and then if there's no PI, they don't get that spot foul. The foul's taken off the board. But I do think that pass interference being a spot foul, I don't think you can take that away, because if a guy's obviously going to catch it for a 40 or 50-yard gain and you're only giving him 15 yards for it, I think that's stupid.
At the same point, a defensive holding's 10 yards. It's 10 yards. So, I mean, you could make that argument there. I will still stand on the fact, and one more point I want to make on the overtimes, that basketball is the only other sport that you have multiple point values for different ways to score, and they go to the end of their overtime. So again, if you want touchdowns to be sudden death after the second team gets the ball, that's fine. But I think we should either play till the end of the quarter or have only touchdowns be sudden death. I don't care which one. I just don't think we should be able to win a game off a field goal with time on the clock. But moving on, 49ers implode in Seattle as they lose 41-6. Star of the game is Kenneth Walker. He had 19 attempts, 116 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 receptions for 29 yards. The Seahawks, you look at the stats, the Seahawks didn't dominate the game statistically, but that game was tilted the entire time. You had the Rashid Shaheed return touchdown, which kind of set the tone for the game. You're like, uh-oh. And Seahawks won in rushing, 175 to 108. Didn't even allow the 49ers to get in the red zone. Didn't even allow them. That is insane that you didn't allow the Niners to get in the red zone. They were +3 in turnovers, special teams touchdown, and 7 PBUs, and they just won both sides of the trenches. The Niners gave a valiant effort. They were 0-3 on fourth, which I don't know how much of a part that really played. I just think this was the implosion as a result of all the injuries. I said last week that this was Kyle Shanahan's best coaching job. I don't think that this changes it. I think the Seattle's, and it's kind of hard to tell, but I think the Seahawks are incredibly dominant. That defense is so good. And yes, Sam Darnold didn't have a touchdown, whatever, but he might have had one. Either way.
JSN.
Oh yeah, he did have the JSN one. But Sam Darnold didn't light it up. I think he had 130 yards or something like that. He didn't light it up, But I do feel happy for Sam. I'm glad he got a win in the playoffs after all the shin beatings he got last year. And it the Niners were just completely suffocated in that game, and it was you're like, oh. As soon as that Rashid Shaheed touchdown happened, and so I think I just think the Niners imploded. You kind of had to expect that at some point, and when you play a team as good as Seattle in Seattle, I think that will cause you to implode. And it was still a great coaching job by the 49ers, and we'll move on with Seattle in the NFC Championship.
Right. So one of the big things that I think taken away from this game is the Legion of Boom back? Like the Seattle secondary, is it back? Like you look at what they've been able to do, and again, as I said last week, you kind of take the Rams game out of the picture where Stafford threw for like 450. But I mean, they just suffocate every single passing team that they play against. And Purdy threw for 140. But you look at, again, next gen stats. If you're a stats guy like me, you got to love this. Throws longer than 10 yards down the field. Purdy was, what, 2 of 9 for 35 yards in an interception? Nah, no interception there. But still, just those downfield throws aren't getting there. Didn't have an interception. And looking back to what I said last week, for the you kind of touched on this, where the Seahawks aren't great on offense, but what I said that Seattle needed to do was control the time of possession and wear down the Niners defense. It had been just decimated with injuries, and Seattle didn't really control the time of possession. 31 minutes, 28 minutes, or 29 minutes. Third down efficiency. The Niners outdid the Seattle in third down efficiency. 6 of 12 for the Niners, 4 of 10 for Seattle. So didn't do that. And then get JSN involved early was my last key. JSN was like 3 catches for 19 yards and a touchdown. But
At the same point, they didn't need to.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't need anything outside of the Rashid Shaheed touchdown.
Yeah,
Like they would have won the game
then,
just with that.
Early in the game, you kind of knew it was going to be bad. Kenneth Walker had a day, and they want to run the ball, and I think they just didn't need to really. They didn't really need to really throw the game in the air, and why put the ball in danger if you don't have to? Because you had obviously the Kittle injury, you had CMC get hurt late in the game, you had Jake Tonjes get hurt, so it just you had so many injuries, including in this game. It was impossible for them to. It's just it was going to implode at some point.
So, and that was the next point I was going to make was you look at it, and the turnovers for San Francisco played a big part because I think Seattle started a lot of their possessions in plus field position. You had one interception from Purdy and 2 fumbles. But at the same time, yeah, McCaffrey had the stinging shoulder. I think you saw that on one of those attempted chip blocks. Tonjes, who was their leading receiver for the game, I think. I don't know if he tore his Achilles or if it was one of those like bone spur things. Obviously,
It looked
dude,
bad.
it did not look like a situation you want to be in. And then Kittle, Fred Warner, and Nick Bosa also didn't play. They were all out for the season. Have you seen the conspiracy theory about the electric substation that's right next to their practice field?
No.
So there's like a massive electric substation that's like on the fence of the 49ers practice facility. And there's like conspiracy theories going around that like this is why the Niners always have injury problems. Is it something to do with the like the electricity that's being given off from that?
I'm not a scientist. I could not tell you. But like you said about the turnovers, there were off the there were 14 points off the turnovers. The last one the third turnover, the first two turnovers, they got touchdowns on, and that put the game at 34-6, which kind of ended the game in the third quarter. And the last one was the fumble in the fourth, which you kind of knew the game was over already. Not to mention, every time all three times the Niners went for it on fourth down, they got points out of. It was a field goal and touchdown. So those things, it just, like I said, it kind of just imploded on the Niners. They couldn't really get anything going, and I think it says a lot about that defense. And next week we will see a rematch where I do think Sam Darnold will have to throw a little bit more.
Yeah, and the first two matchups between the Seahawks and Rams were classics. And that's one of the things that I don't know if you've noticed this year as well, but between the CFP and the NFL playoffs, it has been probably one of the best 2 months of football we've ever had, at least from what I can remember. So I'm very looking forward to championship weekend next weekend and the Super Bowl 3 weeks from now. But
speaking of the Seahawks, I just got this breaking. Zach Charbonnet is out for the season.
ooh,
He suffered a knee injury and he is out for the season. I just got that per Adam Schefter.
so that'll be interesting.
So,
Kenneth Walker will get 95% of the reps now.
if not, yeah. So,
If not
I mean,
100.
obviously Charbonnet was out for a lot of that game, but yeah, that is a little bit of a heartbreaker, especially because Charbonnet was hot, and it's an embarrassment of riches in the running back room because you have those two guys that can get really hot. Speaking of not being hot, Sean McDermott did get fired, and we'll touch on this real quick. I know this wasn't in our notes. Sean McDermott did get fired. I forgot to mention that. And I understand it. It sucks for McDermott, but at the same point, you couldn't get it done. I don't really know who you're going to go out and get, and we'll cover this in depth a little bit more, either later in the week or next week. But Buffalo, another job with a lot of ready-to-win pieces just came on the market. You just had the Ravens come on the market. The Steelers came on the market. You had Atlanta, who's on the market. You now have Buffalo that's on the market. So a lot of ready-to-win jobs. And luckily, we're not too far deep in the coaching cycle. But your overall thoughts on the firing?
So I don't know if this person's going to listen to the podcast or not, but I was talking with a certain Bills fan this morning who I've given a load of shit to, a load of crap to over the past couple of days. And one of the things I said was, you look at all of the coaches that became available on Black Monday after the regular season ended. You had Harbaugh getting fired within that week. He wasn't the Black Monday chopping block, but Tomlin and as of right now, I think Tomlin is probably the best choice, but you're going to have to trade to go get him because the Steelers still have rights to him as he stepped down and was not fired. But you look at it and you look at what the Bills have done since McDermott came into the job. Yes, they haven't gotten the job done, but you look at what they've had to try and deal with. You've dealt with Patrick Mahomes and the dynasty of the Chiefs. I think that was the end of the Brady era in not Tampa Bay, but New England was right around the start of when Josh Allen was there, if I'm not mistaken.
2017, McDermott got hired.
2 years. Well, Allen was a 2020 draft pick?
Something like that, but McDermott was there for 9 years.
So, again, but you've seen them go to the AFC Championship twice, I believe.
Twice. Yep. And then
they lost in the divisional round 3 times under Allen. So I think he was maybe a 2019 draft pick, started in 2020. But you look at the times before and how pitiful of a franchise the Bills were between that 4 straight years of going to the Super Bowl and McDermott coming in because they weren't really anything. The Patriots ran the East, and it was just abysmal. Now there was life in that franchise. While you didn't get over the hump, I don't know how much of or I guess was it Saturday's game you can blame on McDermott. Yes, you can say, hey, this play call wasn't good, that play call wasn't good, time management wasn't the greatest. What you can say whatever. The turnovers don't necessarily fall on him. Yes, there were some boneheaded plays, especially at the end of the first half by Allen, where you allowed Denver to go up 10. And ultimately, I think if you don't let them get that last field goal, they aren't really in a position to go out in the second half and succeed. I think that was a massive momentum changer. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, who are you going to go get now? Like, I think this is one of those situations where you're setting back your franchise by a year or two.
I can agree with that. And the thing with McDermott is he made playoffs 8 of the 9 years he was there. Won the AFC East, I believe it was 4 or 5 times. 2 conference championship appearances, which I believe were both against the Chiefs. And yeah, he didn't get over the hump. Sometimes it takes a while for guys to get over the hump.
Look at Alex Ovechkin. Look at how long it took him to get over the hump.
But even in football in general, I mean, I know this is college, but look at Ryan Day. Look at Dan Lanning's trying to get over a hump. Mike McCarthy, it took him a while to get over the hump. Trying to think of other guys in the NFL. I mean, Andy Reid. Look at Andy Reid. He couldn't get over the hump for the longest time. And he finally got a Super Bowl with Kansas City. So it takes guys a while to get over the hump. I think we live in a very what have you done for me lately sport. And I think that it permeates college football. It permeates the NFL. It permeates every sport. It's a what have you done for me lately thing. I think that's really a problem because I think you make overreactionary moves, and we'll see who they can go get. There's not as many bona fide candidates as there were last year, and because I don't think Tomlin's going to go get a job, and the 2 best candidates are off the market now. So, speaking of those 2 best candidates, John Harbaugh got hired by the Giants. If you're the Giants, why not? They opened the briefcase and were like, you can have this along with a young quarterback, and kind of like how you did with Lamar. He's got a little Lamar in him. He can move, he can shake. Like, it's that type of thing. They've made the playoffs twice in the past 15 years. They're 7-27 the last 2 years. And again, they opened up the briefcase. It was $20 million for a season for 5 years. And I do think they have a young quarterback and core of their team in place. Obviously, a lot of them had season-ending injuries this year. But you look at Harbaugh, his resume speaks for itself. He's 113, I mean, at the Ravens. Super Bowl winner, made the playoffs 12 out of the 18 years he was there. And so Harbaugh's resume speaks for itself. They do have a good amount of roster building to do for the Giants. But I mean, if they can get Todd Monken at the OC too, which seems to be a lot of the chatter, if they can get that defense shored up a little bit more, because their defense was really bad, especially at the beginning of the season. But I have this hire as an A for the Giants. They gave him a lot of money, but like I said, Harbaugh's resume speaks for itself, and the Giants just kind of want to get in the playoffs again. And so I think that market's very attractive, and I think that's why they landed him over Atlanta landing him. But I'll get your thoughts on this hire overall.
So, and you kind of touched on this. One of the biggest things that I'm looking at, and I'm like, hey, can he mold Jackson Dart into the same kind of MVP caliber player that Lamar Jackson was? Given Dart is, I think, much bigger in stature. He's a lot, I don't want to say heavier built, but he's more of a pickup truck rather than a Ferrari, if that makes sense. He's heavy duty. He's got bigger frame to him. He can take bigger hits, if you know what I mean. And I'm looking at it. One of the biggest things, if you're Harbaugh, you got to teach the kid how to protect himself. Dart being in the concussion tent almost every other week is not going to be a successful long-term strategy. But to have him, to have Scat, that young core of Neighbors is in there too. To have that young core to be able to really kind of mold them and have a head coach, a very veteran head coach who's been around the block, who's won it all. I think he's been to the AFC Championship a game or two. But to have someone like that at the helm of your ship and to be able to go and kind of have him shape up the next generation guys, even if it's only for 5 years before he retires. Given I think Harbaugh's a little bit younger, so he has a longer runway. But I mean, he can do this as long as he wants until he wants to retire. I mean, he's done everything there is to do in the sport. So that's my biggest question is what can he make out of Dart? He kind of has a blank canvas. You know what Dart is, but what can he make him into with that dual threat quarterback?
And I will give one last point before we move on. You saw him with Lamar. He didn't make Lamar into a pocket quarterback, kind of how the Cowboys did with Dak, because Dak out of college was a dual threat quarterback. He allowed Lamar to be Lamar, but turned him into a much better pocket passer, so he has both. I'll get your grade on that real quick, and then we'll move on.
A+ higher.
All right. Kevin Stefanski gets hired by Atlanta. I thought Atlanta was the most win-ready job, even ahead of the Steelers. They have a lot of young pieces. They've got a really young, good defense. A little bit questionable at the quarterback situation. Matt Ryan was named president of football. This comes not long after that. And you look at Stefanski, he brought Cleveland to their first playoff berth in like 18 years. He was 45 and 56 there. He was a two-time coach of the year. And I think a lot of things got put on Stefanski that weren't Stefanski's fault in Cleveland. I think he will do incredible things with this Atlanta defense. And I think the team itself has to get the quarterback situation figured out. It looks like Kirk Cousins is on his way out, and they will ride with Michael Penix for at least next year. But I had this as an A-. They missed out on Harbaugh, which they were very in on Harbaugh, but you got the second best candidate available.
And you mentioned the Browns, or I guess Stefanski kind of taking part of the blame for stuff that wasn't his issue. I think the Browns are very close to being one of the most dysfunctional franchises in sports in general. You look at the talent that has been through there, and you look at kind of, I don't want to say, the trajectory that players go on when they leave the Browns. You look at Baker Mayfield, given it took him a year or two to finally find his landing spot. But when he was on the Browns, everyone was like, oh, he's a bust, can't play, whatever. Goes to Carolina, is mid, signs that like 3-game deal with the Rams, plays in the same week that he signed with them, and then lands in Tampa Bay, and he's been phenomenal in Tampa. I mean, Tampa's got their guy. They love him there. He's the most notable when that comes. I guess Sam Darnold. Did he go and play the Browns at some point?
No.
Who's another one of those quarterbacks that I feel like there's one more big one that I'm missing? No.
I think you're thinking of the Jets or the Panthers.
The Jets are also a dysfunctional franchise, but still, you see all of the talent that has been through the walls there, and just their inability to win games. I mean, you've got one of the best defensive players of all time. Myles Garrett will go down as one of top 10 defensive player of all time, one of the greatest edge rushers of all time, and you still somehow can't find a way to make the playoffs. Given you made them in 2020 and 2023, and then I think they beat the Texans in 2023 that first round, didn't they? And then got bumped in the divisional.
It was 2020. think they lost in the first round in 2023 because they played the Chiefs in the divisional that year in 2020.
Um, but to have as much talent as they do, and given I think they've got their own quarterback situation that they need to figure out between Shador and Dylan Gabriel, because everyone, and this is one of my biggest issues, is you look at their college careers of the two, and in no way, shape, or form is this about race. In no way, shape, or form should this ever be made about race. But when you talk about Sanders and like, oh, he's not being given a fair shot, give me a break. You look at what he didn't do shit in college. He had a losing record, and then the one bowl game he makes gets absolutely annihilated by a BYU defense that had him running around for his life the entire game. He holds on to the ball way too long, which is something that we have very clearly seen in the NFL. I mean, he doesn't know how to throw out of a sack. He's taken way too many sacks, and he's throwing the ball to the other team on a rate that you don't want to see from a young guy. If you're looking at having a sophomore slump next year, you can't go any lower than rock bottom. You're already in Cleveland. The expectations are dirt poor, and you're somehow finding a way to go even lower than that.
All right, moving on to the Falcons portion of this hire. Got on a tangent about Cleveland. We're talking about the Falcons. Any takes on the hire in general?
I think that on the flip side of the Browns, and I know you just said move on from the Browns, but on the flip side of the Browns, the NFC South might be one of the most wide open divisions, given you've seen the Saints. Shameless plug. You've seen the Saints go on a run here. I think the Saints are very well set. They drafted very, very well last year and got the most production out of that draft class. But I don't think that there's like a clear number one team in the NFC South, which is perfect if you're Stefanski going in there and trying to win on day one. You've got a very solid defensive core. You've got Drake London. You've got Michael Pitts. Is that his name? What's his first name?
Kyle
Pitts. There it is. Kyle Pitts. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking Michael Trask.
You also have Bijan.
And Penix.
You have Xavier Watts on that defense.
You have a very good young core there that has the ability to be there for a while. Go under Stefanski in a wide open division. Given I don't think anyone out of the NFC South is going to get a wild card spot within the next 2 years because the West is just unbelievable right now. But it's not entirely unlikely for him to go and get a 3 or 4 seed in the NFC next year.
There were 3 teams tied at 9 and 8 in the NFC South, and the Saints went on a run at the end of the year. I think the NFC South might be a very good division moving forward to traditionally what we think. I think the Bucs are the most questionable team because they're kind of on the decline and rather than the incline, like the Panthers, the Saints, and the Falcons. But
I think the big thing for the Bucs though is having managed all the injuries, because that was something they had to deal with a lot this year. Emeka Ibuka, I think, missed some time with injury. Michael Evans missed time with injury.
Yeah. So but it is a very wide open division. But at the same point, that also early thoughts, that might be one of the biggest increases in a division that we will see next year. But we will move on. What was your grade on this fancy guy?
For what was available, because obviously you didn't get Harbaugh, and Harbaugh was the number one. He was number one on everyone's board. I still think this is an A hire. I mean, he was the second best guy available. You didn't wait long at all to get him. Once Harbaugh's off the board, Stefanski, boom, that's our guy. You went out and got him. So you don't wait at all. And now he's in the room. You're confident. You're like, hey, we've got our guy. And you're not going to be in the same situation Buffalo is. And Buffalo's sitting here wondering, hey, who do we go get? So I very good move by Arthur Blank in that Falcons ownership group. Very good move. And I think Matt Ryan moving into the front office there very good start for his tenure there. And I don't want to say ownership, but the front office.
The Patriots freeze the Texans offense in a 28-16 win. Our star of the game is Carlton Davis. He had 4 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 4 pass breakups, and 2 interceptions. The Pats just put the Texans offense in a stranglehold. And I'm going to go off on a little bit of tangent here in a second. The defense had 5 takeaways, 1 of 4 in the red zone, 2.2 yards per carry, 3 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 14 PBU, 9 quarterback hits. That defense was just incredible this week. The offense made the plays when it had to. They got to protect the ball. I mean, Will Anderson's an honorable mention for star of the game. He had 3 sacks. I think it was like 2 tackles for loss and 2 forced fumbles. They got to protect the ball better. Jake May's had a lot of fumbles. I think he's had 6 or 7 fumbles in the playoffs. You're an idiot. I think Vrabel's building something really special there. I don't know if you saw it, but after the game, he's waiting for his players to all walk in the tunnel to dap all of them up. That is awesome. He walks out there every time a guy's injured to go check on him. I think Vrabel has set an amazing culture in New England. And is the dynasty back? But moving on to the Texans, the defense was great. They had 5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 6 PBU, 3 takeaways, 3 of 14 on third down. Held the Patriots to 3 of 14 on fourth down. And these next 2 points kind of lead into each other. The injuries really hurt the Texans. They were without one of their tackles. Dalton Schultz got injured. Nico Collins was out. The injuries really hurt them on offense. 1 of 4 in the red zone. That's got to improve. And the hot button issue is CJ Stroud. He didn't play great. Made a lot of boneheaded decision, but it was not all on him, and I would die on that hill. Running the ball, they had 22 attempts for 48 yards. In the first half, they had 12 carries for 8 yards. CJ, a lot of boneheaded decisions. Don't get me wrong. Why are we talking about moving on from him? It doesn't make any sense. If you go look at the Texans' offensive line, CJ's rookie year, that offensive line was way better than the one they have now. I know they've got a couple of skilled players now, but he didn't have them in this game. His 2 best weapons he was without. Woody Marks got hurt during this game. Then you had Kate Stover get hurt towards the end of the game. Like I said, a lot of boneheaded decisions by Stroud, but it was not all on him. One of the interceptions, Higgins just freaking volleyball set it all the way in the air for the Pats to take it away. The Pats defense played tremendous. And so I don't think we should put this all on CJ. And why are we, as an NFL fan base, being like, oh, poor Josh Allen. Oh, poor guy. He really deserved a ring this year. And then when CJ Stroud turns the ball over 4 times, he's the worst quarterback to walk the planet. But Josh Allen can turn the ball over 4 times, and it's okay. It doesn't make sense to me, but I digress. Some insane defensive stats for you real quick, and then I'll get your thoughts, Briggs. There were 30 offensive drives in this game, 8 turnovers, 5 interceptions, 5 forced fumbles. Both teams were combined 10 of 31 on third down. There were 8 sacks, 15 tackles for loss, 20 PBU, 11 quarterback hits, and both teams had less than 4 yards of play. So, in a defensive showdown, even though it had over 40 combined points, 44 combined points, I believe.
Yeah,
44
right.
combined points. What was your overall thoughts of the game and moving forward for both these teams?
So I know for everyone watching the game, you could see it was pretty much a blizzard for half that game. Was it just me, or when you were watching that game as well, did it look like when Stroud was throwing the ball, it was kind of almost just slipping out in a forward motion? Like the balls didn't really have that tight of a spiral. It just looked like it was coming out weird. I know there were a lot of balls that were deflected at the line, but there were a couple of, I remember there were a couple of like kind of mid to deep throws that it ended up just not being anywhere close to the mark. And I think that was partly because I don't know if the ball was wet, if he couldn't get a good grip on it with how cold it was, but it just came out of his hand looking like a duck. I don't know if it was just me or if anyone else noticed that too. Drop a
I
comment
will
below if you
say,
did.
I know he's played 3 years in Houston, but let's not forget he
He's
played
an Ohio
in the
State
Big Ten.
quarterback.
He played in the Big Ten. He's played in snow games. I believe one of the games he played against the Wolverines was a snow game. He's played in snow games before. So and CJ's thing coming out of college was his accuracy, and he was pretty accurate his first year, but the last 2 years he has not been anywhere near accurate. I don't know if his eyes keep falling down to the rush because he did get beat. He has gotten beat up the last couple of years, and like he has not turned the ball over this year. There were 12 turnovers from the Texans this year. In the playoffs, they turned the ball over 7 times. So, but anyways, continue on your points.
So going back to last week, talking about what New England needed to do to win. They needed to protect the ball and to protect Drake May. Given that didn't really pan out, protecting the ball, Drake had 3 turnovers of his own. You had the interception and 2 fumbles. Protecting Drake himself, Will Campbell lost the battle of the wills against Will Anderson, as you just mentioned, his sacks and pressures. So they didn't really do that. But what they did do, and what I was proud of, was one of the big things that I said. Drake May had to get the ball out quickly, on time, and efficiently. And like the quick check down throws and kind of like the passes, like the short passes, he was 2 of 4, 4 of 4, 2 of 3, 3 of 3, and 3 of 4 like regions on the field. That comes out to I think about 90%, with 2 touchdowns, and just doing quick math in my head, probably close to about 100 yards. Yeah, a little bit over 100 yards. So half his yards came from those quick throws, being able to get it out. And while it ultimately in the end didn't really break down that defensive front for Houston as I thought it would, because the time of possession battle, I think, was still, it was still fairly close. It was a 5-minute difference, 32-27. So while that was like the big thing that I think they needed to do to win, to kind of try and neutralize that defensive front, I think the Patriots defense ended up doing what I thought the Houston Texans defense was going to do to New England. I thought Houston was going to have a field day with the turnovers. And going into the game, I didn't really know what New England was. I know there was a lot of talk about, hey, they've played 2 teams with above 500 win percentage. Are they actually for real? And seeing what they did to Houston, who has been one of the better teams in the league this year, especially defensively, I'm willing to say that, especially now, they've got an easy path to the Super Bowl, given they have to go through Mile High. I think
Yeah.
that's correct. Yeah, because they played the Chargers last week, so they're the number 2 seed. They have to go through Mile High, but it's Jarrett Stidham. While Stidham's probably Denver's best chance at it, that New England secondary, I think, is going to be able to get home and get 2-3 interceptions. Stroud, and you talked about this for a second, but he had a QBR of 21.1. I don't know if you've seen this. If you just spike the ball on every play, that gets you roughly a 39.6 QBR. That tells you just how rough of a game it was for Stroud. So I don't know what D'Amico Ryans and that coaching group need to do for Houston going into the offseason this year, but something has to change, because I feel like it's been some of these games, I don't want to say it's been like prime time, but they've been kind of hot and cold. They'll show up great one week, and then the next week they just kind of wither away. So I think consistency has to be a big key for them moving forward.
I also do think it really hurts when you don't have your top 2 weapons. I can't say this enough.
And
When in a offense that was already thin on weapons without Tank Dell this year,
I was going to mention the Tank Dell injury.
they were without Nico Collins, and Dalton Schultz got hurt in the first quarter. And then Cade Stover got hurt towards the end of the game. Who was their second tight end? So Woody Marks was out a good amount of that game. So you didn't, like, at least a quarter. So any change, like, they still fought. They were not good in the red zone. That's got to change. They weren't good in the red zone all season. But at the same point, it's like the fact that ESPN and the fact that we're talking about moving on from CJ Stroud because we saw Davis Mills play 3 games this season, it mind boggles me. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I get it. I get I get the criticism, but the fact that we're talking about moving on from Stroud is just, it's unbelievable to me. But any parting thoughts on Stroud or the team in general?
I think ever since that first year, it seems like Stroud has just not been the same. He had a sophomore slump, and it's just kind of still been in that slump. So I think he really needs to work. I don't know what he needs to do, if he needs to do that Jaden Daniels VR stuff. He needs to do something. He needs to change, and I don't want to say take more responsibility on that offense, but given there's so much you can do with injuries, but you look at Josh Allen's wide receiver core. He doesn't have a Tank Dell. He's got Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, and that's it. Pretty much as receivers. Keon Coleman's been much of a no factor this year.
Khalil Shakir.
Shakir's been
number
okay.
1.
But again, you look at that, there's only so many excuses you can make.
I do agree. I will say, after that concussion, his rookie year, I think it was a concussion, he hasn't been the same. At the same point, hasn't had the offensive line, but or as good of an offensive line he did his first year. But again, like, he does need to find a way to improve. And like I said, his thing coming out of college was his accuracy, and just hasn't been incredibly accurate the last 2 years. He's still chasing that rookie success. I think and I think it comes with development. I don't think there's a lot of quarterbacks that have been super developed, and I was having this discussion with Dylan last night. There's not a lot of quarterbacks that have developed really well under defensive head coaches. You have Herbert and you have Allen. That's it. And Allen has the super genius in Joe Brady. He's had him for most of his career. That's when Allen really took off. Harbaugh is a special teams guy, so he doesn't count. Lamar doesn't count. So that's really it under the defensive head coaches. So just some food for thought, and especially with a first-year offensive coordinator, Nick Caley. And I thought the game plan was incredibly questionable, and the lack of change of the game plan, no changing the launch point to get away from that pressure. But speaking of which, the Cardiac Bears fall to the Rams, 20-17. Start of the game was Kyron Williams, 21 attempts, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 receptions for 30 yards. Takeaways: Stafford and the Rams do it late again. And speaking of Stafford, is he hurt? He was 65% completion percentage in the regular season, 52% in the postseason. He was less than 50% last night against one of the worst passing defenses in the league. They were +3 in the turnovers. They had 10 points off of those, including the game-winning field goal. And the secondary was incredible after the criticism they got last week. They had 9 PBUs and 3 interceptions. And so I said that the Bears need to attack the secondary, and what would the cost of that be? Well, they kind of did, and the cost was 3 interceptions, along with DJ Moore deciding to not go after the football anymore. The defense for the Bears really played well without the turnovers. They lived and died on the turnover all year. This is the second game, I believe, in the playoffs, so they didn't have any turnovers. They had 4 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 7 PBUs. I think Caleb really needs to improve on his accuracy. He's been incredibly inconsistent, and they got away with that against the Packers. They weren't able to get away with that against the Rams. Play of the year? Play of the year? What a play. And just a magical season for the Bears. They will be back. For the Rams, I'm really concerned about Stafford and his health because he's not going to be able to get away with passing for under 50%, and we'll preview the game later in the week. He's not going to be able to get away with passing for 52% against the Seahawks. Like, they really need him because I don't think there's going to be a lot of running room there for Williams. I think they will have about 100 yards, but nothing crazy. And it's just for the Bears, really. Their Rams defense played great. Gave up 17 points. They bent but didn't break. So they gave up a lot of yards, but they didn't really give up a lot of points. They gave up the 17 and a late touchdown, but the questionable play calling towards the end of the game really affected that. And I really think for the Bears, I think this Bears team is going to be incredibly good. I think once Caleb gets a little bit better at the ball placement aspect of this offense, they will continue to improve because Caleb, you see in that last play, it was an incredible play. He makes those plays. If he can play within the offense just a little bit better, along with those super crazy magical plays, the Bears offense will be incredibly scary. And I'm excited to watch it. They forced this Rams pass rush to have 0 sacks, which is just incredible. They have been really good all year. And that's about all I have.
I would first like to apologize to Caleb Williams. Last year, I thought this dude was a bust. And coming out of college, I said he was a bust. I will say I was wrong. Hand up for accountability. I will publicly admit that I was wrong on that. The combination between Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams is going to be elite. And we've seen that this year. They have, again, his ability to extend plays with his legs. And given when he does, Bears fans will go from no to yes in the span of 5 seconds. It is unbelievable. And watching, I remember I saw a video of the Barstool Chicago guys that were watching the game. They were doing like a live stream for it. Watching their reaction to the last play was unbelievable. I think it's just one of the coolest things you can watch related to it. But I have never been one to really pull for the Bears. I've been kind of very anti-Bears since Caleb got there. Last night, I found myself actively rooting for them. I don't know what it was, but it was like David versus Goliath almost, in trying to really take out the offensive juggernaut that was Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams. That whole group had just buzzed through everyone they played. And to just see the Bears go and outgain them on offense by a decent bit too. And you look at the last play for DJ Moore to give up on a ball like that and cost them their season. Like, they're going home now. And he just stopped running the route. Like, dude, you got to be fighting for every stinking yard in this game, and you just give up on it. I'm not even a Bears fan, and that pisses me off. I mean, just sitting here watching it, you got like Caleb Williams is running around for his life for half this game, running away from that very skilled Rams defensive front, trying to do everything he can to win the game. Colston Loveland, fantastic game from the dude. Montez Sweat had a fantastic game on the defensive end. A lot of those Bears defensive players gave it their all. A lot of those Bears offensive players gave it their all for more than 60 minutes, more than 100%. And for DJ Moore on that last play, especially after they tied the game up with seconds left, to just let up on the route, I'm not getting that. For that to be the way you lose, I feel like if I was a Bear, I was waiting in the locker room for him after the game to just beat the crap out of him. Like that, I mean, that's unbelievable. Like, as someone who's played sports my whole life, and to have trust in other members of your team to go out there and get the job done on a play-by-play basis, and to watch him blow it like that, Bears players have every right to be mad at him. I mean, you could have given any bit more effort, and you guys would have had a better chance of winning the game. Third downs, I thought were going to be the difference maker in this game. They really didn't make all that big of a difference. LA was 5 of 16. Chicago was 9 of 19. And LA being just under 33% and Chicago being just under a half, you would have thought that forcing the Rams into kind of those longer third down situations, which is what I said they had to do to win the game earlier in the week. I said, hey, you have to do what Carolina did, force them in those longer 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, to where they can't just bully you with Kyron Williams, and that's how you're going to win the game. Carolina almost had it. Chicago almost had it. I think Seattle will be able to do it with that defensive front. That's all I got to say. But what a season for the Bears. I think they are probably my pick to win the NFC North next year.
As they did this year. And last thing I will say, that interception was not all on DJ Moore. I think the lack of the effort really gave bad optics. Caleb missed them, though. Caleb missed that throw. He absolutely missed that throw.
He could have done more to – I mean, you see bad throws all the time where the wide receiver has to turn into the DB. And DJ Moore looked like he wanted no part of that.
I do agree with that. The Bears did an incredibly good job. I also thought the Texans defense did an incredibly good job of keeping New England in 3rd and long. Speaking of which, that reminded me. But I really am concerned for Stafford, and because both of these MVP quarterbacks, these probably going to be top 2, they've not been extremely accurate in the playoffs like they had in the regular season. And that does make it a really interesting matchup going into these championship games against 2 elite defenses going into that. Speaking of the MVP quarterbacks, our question of the day, we asked you a comment earlier. What will it take for a defensive player to win MVP? A lot of conversation has been around this with Myles Garrett breaking the sack record, and he's not even in consideration. He'll probably win Defensive Player of the Year going away. And I'll set the stage a little bit more. In 2012, the last non-quarterback to win it was Adrian Peterson. He had 2,097 yards with 13 touchdowns. Last defensive player to win it was Lawrence Taylor in 1986 with 20.5 sacks, 105 tackles, 5 PBUs, and 2 forced fumbles. Now, I will ask you, what are your overall thoughts on this? And then I will pitch my argument a little bit more.
So I think, and you look at the current day and age of football and with the way that the AP voters vote, I don't think you're going to see a defensive player win it. Everyone likes to see the offensive players in offensive games. Like, everyone loves to see scoring. You don't see as many like true football fans and like people who genuinely watch the sport will go and they won't mind a defensive battle. Some might prefer it. But you look at who votes for the AP, and especially the AP football rankings for college football. I genuinely wonder how often these people watch the sport, because it just baffles my mind. Like, do I think Myles Garrett should be a front runner for MVP this year? Yes. I think he should very well be in the conversation, but I don't think we're gonna, with the current way the system is, I don't think we're gonna see one, just because of everyone's outlook on offense. I think something's going to have to change for us to see guys like Myles Garrett, like Aaron Donald's gone now, but for them to see guys of that caliber to be in the conversation moving forward.
So I will make this argument. And I think far and away the agreement is quarterback is far and away the most valuable position in football. They touch the ball every play. You lose a game, you saw it with CJ Stroud, it's on you, even if it's not on you, completely on you. And we don't blame one player on defense for losing a game. We don't say, oh, it's Myles Garrett's fault that the Browns are 5-12. It's Kevin Stefanski's fault. It's the quarterback situation's fault. It's the offensive line. We don't blame one specific defensive player for the way a season goes or the way a game goes specifically. And so I think quarterback is far and away the most valuable position. They touch the ball. They have their hands on the ball every play. You're not getting to the playoffs without a top 16 quarterback, and you're not winning a Super Bowl probably without a top 5, maybe a top 8. So Myles Garrett's stats this year: he had 60 tackles, 23 sacks, broke the record, 3 forced fumbles, 1 PBU, and their team was 5-12. Now, the last player to J.J. Watt was a runner-up in 2014. I will give you Aaron Rodgers' stats, and I will give you J.J. Watt's stats. Aaron Rodgers had 65% completion, 4,381 yards, 38 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 43 rushes, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 fumbles, 1 loss, and they were 12-4 and made it to the NFC Championship. J.J. Watt had 78 tackles, 20 and a half. Aaron won in 2014, by the way. 78 tackles, 20 and a half sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 5 fumble recoveries, 1 interception, 5 touchdowns, including offense and defense, 10 pass breakups, 1 block kick. They were 9-7 with no playoffs, and Aaron won that MVP running away with it. And JJ was the runner-up. I would argue J.J. Watt's season in 2014 was better than Myles Garrett, bar none. There was a reason J.J. Watt is who he is. Like, J.J. Watt did so many things. He caught touchdowns that season. And so you never see a quarterback on a bad team go to the playoffs or win the MVP. Like, you could have made the argument for Dak Prescott that year. I don't think you're going to see a defensive player win MVP when they're on a bad team. I mean, J.J. Watt, his team didn't make the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers went to a conference championship that year. You know, the other 2 team quarterbacks that are going to the conference championship this year is the 2 MVP candidates. So I do think, and obviously you have to have a great team around you to be MVP. But I will say that when you're valuable, you win your team games. And I think there's no one that wins their team games more than the quarterback.
I will say, and I know we were talking about Aaron's stats. Stafford has put up 6 more touchdowns and 3 more interceptions than Aaron did in that year he won the MVP. I don't know in a world where we're going to see another defensive player, because every year it seems that we have a quarterback that just goes and plays just stupid all year. So I just, again, I think the system favors the offense too much. While there are some instances in which the defense may have a shot at it, but yeah, that's my take.
And one more parting thought. I think, we'll say Will Anderson. If Will Anderson had Myles Garrett's season, he would be a lot more talked about in the MVP because the Texans went to the playoffs. But when you're 5-12 and 2 of your wins coming in the final 2 weeks of the season, I don't think that when you're as valuable when you're not winning as much games. So with that, we will part off. Sorry, I ran a little long today. A lot to get to. Maybe it got a little in over our heads. Please like and subscribe. Let us know your thoughts on just the entire games, the season, NHL thoughts, anything. Please let us know your thoughts. Like I said, like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. If you find any value, let us know. Let us know what else you want to see. We thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing rest of your weekend, and God bless.